was from Friends of the Earth, and she's quite famous on social networks for out debating David Miliband at one case. I think I'm going to embarrass her by saying that, but there you go. Anyhow, thank you for joining us. And, but without me saying things about you that's embarrassing, tell me a bit about yourself and the work you do at Friends of the Earth.
Sure. And thanks very much for the invitation. And it was hugely interesting to be able to sit in on Toby Perkins there. And if anyone wants to chat data centers at any other point, so I'm Kierra, and I'm a campaigner at Friends of the Earth, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. We work closely with our Scottish partners, but are a separate organisation. So I'm down here. I'm based in Northwest London. So I live not that far from a number of you. And I work really at the moment in Friends of the Earth on adaptation. So heat, flooding, coastal erosion, the kinds of things we're talking about here today. But also on data centers. So again, talk to me. We have talked to the Environmental Audit Committee and to Toby about that many times. And also on water pollution and the hopefully very soon upcoming Clean Water Bill. So yeah, there are a few of the things I work on, and hoping to talk about a bit of that today.
Well, they sound more than a few, so that sounds really interesting. Now, in France of the Earth, you've done a lot of work on, haven't you, on highlighting the areas that's going to be most affected by the heat. And I think in 2022, you identified something like over 4,700 neighbourhoods that experienced the hottest temperatures then. Can you just tell us briefly a little more about that?
Loving the chat. Yeah, sure. So it was actually analysis we released last year in 2025, but very much based on 2022 data. And we're looking to update it now. But the problem with all of this is data doesn't come out and isn't ever verified for a few months after it happens. So took us a little while to get to 2022, and we're hoping to be able to compare it to this year a lot sooner next time. But yeah, as you say, we basically looked at in 2022 what were the hottest day and nighttime temperatures across the UK, and what we found was 4,715 neighbourhoods. So about a third of the country were places where basically the maximum average temperature was about 10 degrees higher than the Met Office says is a heat wave. So the Met Office says a heat wave is about 28 degrees. In these places, the maximum temperature is about 38 degrees. And actually, to take Enfield North as a constituency, our research found that it was a 39.6 degree maximum 3-day maximum there. So like particularly hard hit communities, and we found a third of the country is particularly hard hit. And as Toby mentioned before, we know that that is associated with a load of impacts. So the other thing our research looked at was how much that's already costing us in areas like the NHS. So 6.8 billion a year we did this, and how much that's likely to go up nationally. So the figure we found was to about 14.7 billion pounds a year by the 2050s. So
But
yeah,
it, but it,
basically heat waves are here and they're everywhere.
Yeah, but it doesn't just affect the geography neighborhoods, does it? It affects particular groups of people. So there are some people who are more vulnerable to heat than others, the elderly, pregnant women, people who have disabilities of some kind. How do we identify the most vulnerable people?
So I mean, those communities are really good places to start. And again, as Toby mentioned, looking at things like hospital and care home settings and where those are a good way to identify where people are likely to be hit hardest by heat, but also things like local population information, that the census, to identify people who suffer from various health conditions that might impact on how easy they find it to cool themselves. Talk to GP surgeries about people who are on pills for some kind of mental health conditions often, where they can really mess with the side effects, can really mess with the way your body can regulate itself. Um, Support services who support people who need equipment or machinery to live their daily lives, which can be damaged by the heat. Think about places that are seeing high uptake of those. So those are the kind of communities, and those are, I think, some of the indicators we can look at. And some of the others that we looked at in our research were we looked at areas where things like exposure were increased. So basically, your house is more likely to overheat because the area you live has really poorly insulated homes. So we looked at areas where generally housing has low insulation. We looked at places that have really low levels of green space and shade, as again, a couple of people brought up before. But we also looked at places where actually there weren't local health services and where people might just find the impacts are more worrying, because if you are impacted, it's harder to get support. And what we found there was just over 1,900 neighbourhoods aren't just high heat, but they're high heat and people experiencing one or more of those kind of indicators, which suggests it's going to impact them more. And again, Enfield North, it's about 11 local neighbourhoods that fit both of those criteria.
I mean, in your answer, you mentioned also, so I won't go into it any further, that it's going to affect our services as well, our hospitals, our care homes, our energy system as well. But I gather in FOE that you believe you have, or you think there should be, a new adaptation plan that could mitigate the impacts of those people most affected. How far have you got on that, and what is the essence of that plan?
It was great to hear that Toby mentioned a few of the very immediate and practical things that we've talked about that need to be in that plan. But hopefully they're a real starting point. So, hospitals we can keep cool effectively, care homes and schools that we can keep cool effectively. But I think the thing he didn't mention there and that we've said is that are funded to do that. So we're saying, we need at least £1 billion a year, basically, for the government to invest in those kind of settings, being able to do those things. It's not just saying people, services should do that. Similarly, Toby mentioned people could get shutters on their homes and that would keep our houses cooler. And I thoroughly support that. And I would love to know what the Environmental Audit Committee are doing to ensure there are grants for homeowners, that anyone who is renting, that their landlord has a responsibility to do that, and that there is funding in place for people in private or affordable, in social or affordable or public housing, that they're going to get that done as well. Some other things that we've said we need to do immediately are like a network of cool spaces, planting more trees. Again, that really obvious stuff. But longer term, I think our overview is that we held an event about a month ago with a load of people and representatives of organisations from around the UK who are particularly impacted by heat waves and flooding. And we asked them this question. And this is like a sneak peek because they haven't all formally said we can share this yet, but their priorities, and therefore our priorities, were basically put those people first and involve them and let them shape those conversations, which, seems like it's not exactly rocket science to do that. So make things community led, make sure that particularly those groups who are most affected, disabled people, older people, are in that group and have those groups and have a voice. Make sure that those groups are talking to people across government, so like not just the Environmental Audit Committee. Make sure all of this is really properly funded. It's not just nice, warm words and local commitments, and really build it into systems. So again, Toby mentioned it a bit, But it's not just about fixing housing now, it's about the rules for housing and future. It's not just about standards and adaptation and mitigation now, it's about building those in for the future and giving us like the transparency and the tools so we can all see that's happening and we can communicate it better, as again everyone has mentioned here today.
Okay. Well, thanks. And I mean, you talking about community leads us into the next interview, which is ideal. So thanks, Kierra. You said a lot of really interesting things there.